Hey folks, welcome back for another episode of Code Club. In today's episode, we are going to refactor this plot. This is the original plot from the Our World in Data website, where on Wednesday, so 2 days ago in a live stream, I recreated this same plot in R using ggplot2. It looked basically the same as this with some subtle tweaks to the arrowheads and a few little things, but I think we did a pretty good job of recreating that figure. Also in that episode, I talked about or threw out the offer that we could go about recreating this plot to look different. And so in today's episode, what I'm going to do is just that. We are going to go ahead and recreate that using this line drawing that I made in a critique video on Monday of that stacked bar plot. And so this is what is called a dot plot, or at least that's what I'm calling as a dot plot. The idea being on the x-axis, we'd have the percent of deaths, and on the y-axis, the different causes of death. And then as you recall from the original plot, there are three sources of the media. So there's New York Times, the Washington Post, and Fox News. And so I would draw those in, at least the way I propose this, as three different circles. And then the actual rate or share of causes of death for the United States, I drew as a gray line, and so you might think about that perhaps as a black line, but this is what I'm going to go for, right? So something kind of like this. So as you join in today, by all means, please give me a shout out, say hi, tell us where you're joining from. If you have questions or if you have ideas, by all means, holler. I did put out an initial version of this plot onto the YouTube feed. I don't know what they call it. But if you're not a subscriber to this channel, then you probably didn't see that show up in your feed. So by all means, please subscribe to this channel. Also, this original plot came from this article at Our World in Data. I'll go ahead and copy this link and throw it here in the chat. And just to remind you that if you go to riffomonas.org, which is my website, you'll see at the bottom a form, a simple form to fill out to join the mailing list. And again, kind of the rhythm that I'm going into is that I send out a newsletter at 9 a.m. or whenever on Friday morning. It actually just went out a little bit ago, describing a visualization and how I would go about recreating that visualization at like a very high level, right? So no real code or not too much serious code. Actually, today's has a little bit of code, but anyway, it describes things at a very broad overview. The Monday video then is a critique of that visualization, and then Wednesday is a live stream where I try to recreate that visualization. And if I have time and it warrants, I try to do a refactoring video live stream on Friday, which is what we're doing today, okay? And so again, this data comes from the website Our World in Data from an article called Does the News Reflect What We Die From? And so as you'll recall from the original plot, no, it does not, right? That there's an adage, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So kind of sensational forms of death like homicide, terrorism, drug overdose, suicide, COVID, those are reported on far more frequently than the rate by which people actually die. And the original article kind of gets to that in a second visual that they have here in the article, right? And so things on the left are underrepresented in the media, things on the right are overrepresented in the media, right? So like accident, suicide, COVID, drug overdose, homicide, terrorism, right? That those are overrepresented relative to more mundane things that people actually die from, like heart disease, stroke, liver disease, cancer, right? And so, again, my idea is to go ahead and try to recreate this visualization as I've drawn it by hand, but doing it in R with ggplot2 and other tools from the tidyverse. So let's go ahead and head over to RStudio. And I already have this stub created here. I'm going to use the Playfair display for the serif font, which showed up in the title. So I'll show you that here. This is Playfair display. And then Lato is the second font, which is a sans serif font, which is the font that we see everywhere else. And I've got some, well, maybe this is a little bit jumping the gun, but in the last episode, I believe that I added this Playfair display to have, well, let me go ahead and back this out because I don't know that I necessarily want to bring in these fonts with those weights for a regular and bold font. All right, but anyway, we're going to use the tidyverse show text, which gets us these fonts from Google Font. So we'll run font add Google to get Playfair display and Lato, and then to set the resolution, as well as then loading all of the fonts. So now our fonts will be the Lato and Playfair display. Those will be some font families that we have at our disposal as we go through this episode. And then I've created a GG save statement where I'm going to save the outputted plots to the same aspect ratio of the original plot. Okay, we'll probably shift that around as we go through, but this will get us going. And there might be a little bit of review from the last episode, but there's probably people watching that didn't watch that last episode. That last episode was long, but I think it was good. It had a lot of great content in it. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Maybe you can watch it like, 1.5x speed or something. But anyway, let's go ahead, and we need to get the data in. And so again, we can come back to the article, and at the bottom of the article, there is a section here on methodology. Clicking on that, we then see documentation, and that there is a link to get the final data files, right? And so looking at the bottom left corner of the screen, and that might be hard for you to see with kind of the way things are situated on your screen, it links to a zip file. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the link address, and then I can paste it in here, and we see that this is the link to the zip file. Now, I could click that link, download it, decompress it, but I want to do it in R, okay? So let's do data zip. And so we'll go ahead and save it as data zip by making it a string. And then we can do download file. And so we need to give it the URL as well as a destination file name. So I'll do data zip as the URL. And then I will say, well, I'll go ahead and grab this, okay? And so we'll go ahead and put this in as the destination file name. And so now when I look at my files tab, if I hide myself, I see that I've got this media deaths analysis.zip file. And so of course we now need to unzip that. And so we can then do unzip, and then we'll do, or unzip rather, on this file. So maybe I'll call this data URL. I can't spell URL. And then we'll also do data zip, and the data zip will be this part. Okay. And I'm saving these as variables mainly because I don't want this download file function to be too wide and go off the right side of the screen. Also, in unzip then, we're going to need to put in data zip. And so if I could copy and paste the same value, this string, into both places, but whatever. Maybe you can imagine wanting to do an analysis like this where the file might change over time, right? The file name might change. And so instead of trying to look for every place that I use it, I could parameterize it and make it into a variable. So unzip then, I can give it that zip file, and there's another argument in unzip. Trying to get it to pop up the tool. Well, we'll do data zip, and then we can give it a destination file, right? And so this will be a directory that it's unzipped into. So I'll do OID, and so it should unzip the data file into OID. And I misspelled unzip. Now we try again, and it's saying it's not a file. What? Let's try this again. Requested file not found in zip file. All right, I need to look at the help. All right, so let's do unzip. And all right, so zip file and files. So I want to say what? Xdir. So I want it to be extracted to that directory. Okay. When you don't give the names of the parameters in your function, it uses the order, right? So what it was trying to do was unzip data zip and then extract the file OID, but there's no file OID. Instead, what I want is xdir, so I have to name it if I'm using the parameters out of order, okay? So now that worked, And if I look back at files, I see I now have this OID directory, and then I've got a Python notebook or Jupyter notebook, some Python code, description of the methodology, and then within data, I've got some plots as well as CSV files. All right. And so let me, oh, I went back too far. So let me figure out where I put that. You're seeing that I have a whole bunch of stuff on my desktop, which is a little embarrassing. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we've got our data in, that wasn't it either. There we go, media deaths. Okay, so we've got OID, and then we've got our files and our R script here, right? So we're good to go. And I forget what the CSV file was that I wanted to read in. So we'll go ahead and do read CSV, and then we'll do OID/data, because it put it in there. And so one of the nice things about working within RStudio is that if you start writing the name of your function, and then you give a path, and then you hit tab, it'll open up this box, right? And so you can see there's two CSV files. So there's media death mentions, media deaths results. I don't remember which is which. So let's try the mentions. We'll go ahead and read that in. And so this is not the one I want. This has the year, the source, whether it was New York Times, Washington Post, or Fox News, the cause, the mentions, the single mentions. If instead I got the media deaths results, this then has the cause, the year, and then the number of deaths, the share of deaths, and these are for the actual. This is for across the United States. And then we have Fox mentions, New York Times mentions, Washington Post mentions. We have the share. We have single mentions. We have, that, right? So we have single and mentions. And so their definition of a mention was that if an article mentioned, say, a stroke once in the article, it didn't count that as a mention. If it used the word stroke or something like stroke twice in an article, it counted that as a mention, as an article about stroke, okay? And so the single is the analysis done where stroke may have only been mentioned once versus like an actual mention, okay? All right, and I realized I didn't hit enter to send out that link to you all. So let's see who's here. So we've got Lily Kim from South Korea, welcome. Hey Mike from the UK. Ewan from the UK, thanks for joining for the first time. We got Ibrahim from Algeria, and then Patrick from Kenya, welcome back, and Leonard from Germany. Great. So we've got our data in, and again, if you watched the last live stream, this might be a bit of review, but I want to go over it because review is good. That's how we learn things, right? So we'll do select, and I'll give cause, and I'll do deaths, share, and then we'll do Fox, share, WAPO, share, and then NYT, share. Okay, and so this should get us those 4 columns because these shares are the percentages, right, of the articles that mention that cause of death. Okay, and we've got Phil in the UK. The UK is well represented today. Thanks for coming. So to get this to be plottable, we need to make the data tidy, okay? And so tidy would be where we have one column for the cause, one column for the source, and one column for the share. Because then we could map those columns to an aesthetic with ggplot2. So we'll go ahead and pivot longer, and then we'll do everything but cause, and we'll do names to, and we'll say source, and we'll then do values to, and I'll say share. Okay, and so you can see now we have tidied it, where we have cause, source, share. Awesome. And let's see. Well, we could go directly into ggplot, right? So if I did like ggplot AES, x equals, let's do source to get started, y equals cause, and then if we did fill equals share, and then we did geom call, you might be saying, Pat, that's what we did last time. You're right. That's what we did last time. So let me open this up. And there we go. This is basically what we had last time, although I screwed up because what? I did fill as share, whereas, yeah, so the y should be the share, the percentage, and the fill will then be the cause. All right. And I've got too many windows open here. And so this is basically what we made last time, right? So it was a stacked bar plot. And so I show you this as a review, but also to show you now how we can pivot this to a dot plot. So again, we have these aesthetics, X, Y, and fill, and X as the source, Y as the share, and fill as the cause. And if I show you my sketch here, you can see that I have those same three aesthetics, right? We have cause on the y-axis. I have the share actually on the x-axis. And we could say color, we could say fill as being for the source of the information, okay? And so let's go ahead and change that. So x, so source is, I'm going to make color. Share, I'm going to make x. And cause, I'm going to make x, okay? So what I suggest people do is put the most important variables on your axes, okay? And that way then it's easier for us to see groups of information or to see distances between bits of information when we have a common anchor point, right? And so that's the problem with a stacked bar plot like this, right? Is that it's kind of hard to compare this rectangle to this rectangle, right? Aside from like, there's all these different colors, right? But like this pink at the bottom, which is terrorism, is much easier to compare because they're all anchored on 0. Similarly, accidents at the top here are easy to compare because they're all anchored on 100. Well, my goal with this dot plot is to anchor everything on 0, right? And then we're going to show the actual percentages. And so by putting the percentages on the axis, the cause of death on the axis, we are saying that those are going to be our two most important variables. And then our color, as we'll see, isn't actually that important, right? That the three news outlets all kind of cover these different causes of death the same. So if we can't differentiate between the colors, it's not that big of a deal because they're all the same, right? But I do want to have like a contrast between those three colors and like the actual, okay? And so there's kind of a hierarchy to these aesthetics and how we want to share them. All right. Any reason to use the Magritte pipe versus the base R pipe? No, there is no reason. I've always used the Magritte pipe. Maybe like a couple years ago, they started releasing the base R pipe with base R. And I have never learned the keystrokes, the shortcut keystrokes to make the pipe. So I type this out and my fingers don't even know that I'm doing it. Or I don't even know that my fingers are doing it, right? So in my experience, in some cases, the Magritte pipe does seem a bit faster than the base R pipe. And there's some features with the Magritte pipe that I prefer to the base R pipe. It's been a while since I kind of did a deeper exploration on the two pipes to see if those differences still hold up. But for what we're doing, it doesn't matter. You can use the base R pipe, which is a vertical line with a greater than sign, or the Magritte pipe, which is a percent greater than sign percent, okay? So great. And we have Rens from the Netherlands, welcome, and Patrick from the Czech Republic. And so there are, yes, several Patricks. So yeah, the shortcut is Command-Shift-M, right? And like I said, I type it out because, I don't know, I've never committed to learning the shortcut because, I don't know, it's one more thing. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. All right, so where were we? Okay, so we changed these aesthetics. And so instead of geom call, we want to use geom point. Oh, it is upset because I think I didn't get all the way through. So X was share, and then Y is the cause. All right. So now when we look at what we've got, the big reveal, voila, right? We now have our dot plot. And so it's not a lot to look at this point, right? We've got the causes are arrayed alphabetically. And again, the x-axis is the share, and then we have the different sources as being the different colors, right? And so we can see this red ball is the actual rate of death in the United States for each of these causes, whereas the other colors are from the media. And so what you can see, hopefully, is that for like, So like for like cancer and heart disease, actually, those are far more likely to kill you than what the media would have you believe, right? So the media reports on cancer about 5% of its stories, whereas heart disease is maybe 2 or 3, or not 5% of stories, but 5% of causes of death are cancer versus heart disease is about 2.5. When heart disease is far more likely, 30% more likely to kill you than, or you have a 30% chance of dying of heart disease than compared to any of these other things, right? Whereas like terrorism, the red balls to the left, you're very unlikely to die of terrorism, but the media covers terrorism a lot to get you to think, oh no, this is worrisome. And similarly for homicide, right? Like homicide, you're very unlikely to be murdered, but the causes of death mentioned in the media are above 40%, right? So that was like take-home message number 1 from the article, was that the media highlights sensational ways to die, or what we think of like as like violent forms of death. The secondary takeaway is that actually these 3 media sources don't really vary all that much in what they cover, right? These 3 media sources, because I know we have a lot of international viewers, kind of span the continuum of politics in the United States, at least in terms of like their editorial content. So the New York Times would be considered more left-leaning, Fox News definitely right-leaning, and Washington Post perhaps more in the middle, okay? All right, so we have our dot plot, and I would say this is already an improvement over the stacked bar plot. And so I'm gonna go ahead and close this for now because we already have too many screens open. And yeah, so what should we do now? So let's see, now let's go ahead and see if we can't dodge those points, right? And so the points all fall on the same y-axis line, right? And so for like respiratory disease, I'm missing a point, and it's probably buried under some of these, and so is stroke, right? And so to do that, we can come back to genome point, and we can do position equals position dodge, and I need to give that a width. So let's do 0.25 to start. And so now you can see that these points pull apart, right? And so 0.25 might not be enough. Let's go up to say 0.5. And so that pulls those apart a bit more, okay? And I think maybe we could go a little bit more. Oh, let's do 0.75, and I'll probably call that pretty good. So one thing that, so I think that's a good amount of separation, but the death share is being treated as like a 4th category, right? So like we have, for terrorism, we have the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Fox News, and then the US. And I think what would be best would be to have the US be separate from the 3 media sources and to put the actual on the terrorism line or on the suicide line. So to do that, I'm going to break up the data into 2 parts, okay? And so Rents is suggesting that we should plot the delta from the death share. We'll come back to how we're going to sort the y-axis, but that's a good idea. So let's see. So we have our data. I'm going to go ahead and break the pipeline apart here. And so I'll call this D for data. And then I'll put D as a pipe into ggplot. And just to make sure everything all still looks good, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 2 genome point statements. One with the share of data, or one that's only the US share or the death share, and one that is the media, okay? And so what we could do then would be, Let's see. So in here, in genome point, I will do data equals D, and then we'll do, actually it's going to be data equals D would get us all the data, right? And so this shouldn't change anything, right? That's the same plot. But if I did like filter on D, and I then did source equals deaths share, and I need a closing parentheses, then this is going to use as data only the stuff from the death share, the actual rates of death. And so there we go. We have there the death share. That's only the actual causes of death. And so I think what I'll do for that then is to go ahead and call this color equals black. And there we go. We now have our dot showing the actual rate of deaths, causes of death by the different types of causes of death. Okay. So now what we can do is we can repeat this to get the media. And so then what I'll do is to say source not equal to death share. I'll remove the color, and it is unhappy with me. Oh, well, why are you unhappy with me? Can't add that. Oh, because I have a plus at the end. That's what happens when you copy and paste. Sometimes you bring stuff along that you didn't want. All right, so now what we have is we have the 3 media sources dodged around the line with the black dot. All right. So the dodge doesn't need a seed. There's a jitter, which does need a seed. So jitter, geom jitter or position jitter, will add a random value to the y or the x axis to move things apart, right? And so you'll notice that these are dodged. So like the Washington Post is always dodged up and Fox is always dodged down, right? So, yeah. So let's think here. One thing that I'm thinking is that it would be good to get our colors. Well, let's think. I'm kind of thinking that this black ball maybe would be better as a segment. Let's try that and we'll see how things go. I have an idea of where I want to go because I did make a demo plot, but people didn't all like that. So let's try something else. So let's try geom segment, and we will do color black. That all is good. And then we don't need the position, but we do need an X and an X end. And then we need we need a Y. We need an X, a Y, and a Y end, right? And so X is already set up here. And then Y is going to be, I'll say cause minus 0.25. And Y end will be cause plus 0.25. So I think this might throw an error because cause is a categorical variable, but we'll see. Yeah, it's unhappy, right? So it says caused by error in cause minus 0.25, non-numeric argument to binary operator, because cause is a string, all right? So maybe let's hold off on that for just a minute. And we can think about the order that we want things, because I'm not really going to put the causes as a factor. I'm sorry, not as a character. I'm going to make them as a factor. And so what they did in the original article, and I have in this mock-up, is to do it by % of deaths. So let's try that for now, and we can adjust later, right? And so again, if we come back to this code, then we see that we've got death share here, right? And so I could take this, and I could then mutate cause to be a factor. So I'll do FCT reorder. Or is there an order? No, reorder, right? And so we'll do cause, and we'll do it by deaths share, okay? And then we'll pipe that and everything else. I think I got my parentheses all right. So this should reorder my y-axis to be in the order of the actual deaths. And that's not the one I want. This is the one I want. And so let's see. It's not doing it. Did I forget to save it? Yeah, I didn't save it. I actually didn't output it yet. All right. There we go. So now what we have is heart disease at the top and terrorism at the bottom. And if I had done this instead, looking at the death share, then I would see that heart disease goes down to terrorism, right? All right, so let's go ahead and then put this back to how we had it, so showing the media. And we want this plot, okay? And so now let's put in that segment. And so we'll come in here, turn that off. And the segment, again, we did this, and if we run this, we're gonna get an error, right? So minus and plus is not meaningful for factors. And so what we could do for y would be as.numeric on cause. So a factor is a vector with names, a numeric vector with names on each of those seats, okay? And so if we did like as numeric on cause, we're gonna get its position in that factor, right? And then we can do as.numeric on cause, and this should work because now we're dealing with We're dealing with numerical positioning, right? And it's unhappy, discrete values supplied to continuous scale. And I think that's because I've got my y cause up here, right? And so let's go ahead and change this to be as.numeric on cause. And now this should work. And it's complaining that I've got overlapping intervals, right? And so now what we see is that we have that black segment for each of the causes of death. But it's unhappy with me because I think I made the width too wide. So let's take that back down to 0.25. Non-overlapping X intervals. So I think it has changed my, it has changed my position dodge to making it go by X, which is the default, unless you have categorical variables on the Y-axis, right? And so let's look at the help for position dodge. And there's width, and then there's orientation. So the default is X. So let's go ahead and do orientation equals Y. Okay, the warning goes away. And so now we go back to having our dodged layout, right? And 0.75 is probably too wide, or let's go down to 0.5. And we could probably make our segments wider. So that's like 0.25. Let's make this 0.35. And good. And we can go a little bit further. Let's go up to 0.4. All right, cool. All right, so then we don't have our labels on the y-axis though, right? And so I'm gonna go ahead and close this. So I think we've recreated mostly my vision here, but we want to get back the labels on the y-axis. And so what we could do would be what? Let's see, we could do plus scale y continuous, and we have our breaks from 1 to 15, right? So if we leave that, then all is good, but we don't have our names on those. And so if we look at like D, it's a tibble, right? And so we can look at like D $ cause, and we see that that is a vector. And if we look at the levels, you'll see that we could do like levels on D $ cause, and that's going to give things out in the order. It's actually like an ascending order, right? So like the rarest cause of disease in the actual data is terrorism, whereas it's heart disease in the actual data. So what I could do then for my labels, where are you? Here. We could do labels equals that, and let's see if that works. I think it's going to be reversed. Nope, that's right. So we have terrorism at the bottom, and then, because it goes from the bottom to the top of the plot, right? And so now we have our names back on our y-axis. Okay. Yes, so Mike suggests doing shape equals a pipe, right, or any other character. And so that would work. If we did that, let me maybe do that with geom_point. We could do, or yeah, this one here. We could do shape equals pipe like that. So I'm pretty sure what's going to happen is that that pipe will only be as tall as our normal symbols, right? And so we can see that that's how tall they are. Whereas if I use geom_segment, as we saw, I can make those as tall as I want and as thick as I want, right? Whereas I can't really do that with this shape. I could do like size equals 3. And so that's going to make them a little bit taller and a little bit bolder, but I don't have as much control as I would with like geom_segment, right? So if I did like that with geom_segment, I could come in here and do like line width equals 0.3. And so that's going to maybe make them a little bit more narrow, right? So many ways to do the same thing, but you can certainly do the text. Let's see. So we got a comment. You can do that directly. I think the reordering within AES. So we could use reorder, cause, comma, death share. We could totally do that, but then I won't have access to this variable in the same way that I do if I do a proper reordering using factor, right? So many ways to do the same thing. And so just to remind us where we are, we're here, okay. So these names are good, but they're not the pretty names that they had in the article, right? So let's go ahead and get those pretty names in here. And I think what I'll do is come back up into my mutate, and let's go ahead and put this on separate line because we're going to add a few things. So this, let's see, we're going to add another line. So I'll go to pretty cause, and that's going to be then a vector of values. And if you don't mind, I'm going to cheat. And so if I look up my recent files, let's see. Is this the one? All right, I can't have two files open with the same name. So let me come back. Let's see. Let's see. I've got it in. Oh, I don't have it. All right. We'll do it the long, hard way, but that'll be okay because it'll give me a chance to slow down and think a little bit more about what we're doing. And all right, where did you go? Bear with me a second. Sorry. Okay, so we're gonna go desktop, and then here for the original, this one, right? And so I will hopefully do this a little bit more quickly. And so let's see. So the first thing, so if we look at the actual causes of death and their order is like this. So I want to enter them in the same order they are at this point in the pipeline, right? So the first would be accidents, and then Alzheimer's. And so I want to use the styling that they had. And I need to actually put this within the C function. So after Alzheimer's disease is cancer, and then diabetes. And then after diabetes comes drug overdose. And then we have what? After drug overdose is heart disease. And so if the names were written in the cause column, so that all I'd have to do is like capitalize the first letter, then I would not be typing these out. But we have things like Alzheimer's disease where we've got that like apostrophe S and then we add disease. So I may as well do the whole thing. So then homicide, and then the next I think needs to go on a separate line. So we then have influenza. Here's another one, right? And then pneumonia. And then kidney think it's failure. And then liver disease. And then the long one, lower respiratory diseases, and then stroke. Yep. And then suicide, and then terrorism, and that needs to be in quotes. Okay. So that went faster than last time. And let's see. So now we have our pretty cause. And maybe instead of reordering because I'm using the factor labels down here with the scale y continuous, maybe instead of making the factor on cause, I'll make it on pretty cause. Okay. And yeah, so I'll do pretty cause, and then this needs to be minus cause and pretty cause. And I'm wondering if there's actually a reason to even have cause. Let's leave it for now. I think what I'll do is I will experiment with removing it and see if that causes any problems. So I'm going to comment it out. Whatever. I'll just go ahead and remove it. Okay. I don't think I need cause. And so this is the order of the causes. So then we'll do pretty cause like this. And just to confirm for ourselves what things look like. Oh, pretty cause must be 15 or 1, not 14. So I am forgetting something. All right. So let's try this again. And someone's probably already spotted what I'm missing. But let's see. Yeah, I'm missing something. Okay, let's just look at the select, through the select statement. All right, so we have accidents, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, COVID. We're all trying to forget COVID. COVID-19, diabetes. All right, and then we want to redo our indenting, and I think we're good. Now when we look at this, that's great. Things line up, good. Now we can get rid of cause, and we can get rid of, we've got pretty cause there. We'll go ahead and get rid of this minus cause. So that should work for D. So now we have source as pretty cause. So that's wrong. Why is that? Okay. So the problem is we've got death share, Fox share, WAPO share, New York Times share, and then source and share. I must have done... Oh, I pivoted longer pretty cause. I want to pivot longer everything but pretty cause, right? And so now when I look at this, now things look right, right? So before, without the minus, we're going to pivot longer pretty cause, which I don't think really did anything, right? Like we still get back basically what we had, but our source turns to pretty cause and our values became share. So that was wrong. So we want to do everything but pretty cause. And so now if we look at D, we get back to what we want. And then here, instead of cause, I want pretty cause. And so then let's go ahead and do this. And then, let's put these on separate lines so they don't go off the side of the screen. Okay, so that's, and I didn't change the bump on both. Let's go ahead and make a variable, right? So let's call it bump. We'll do segment bump, and let's do 0.25. And that way, I don't have to worry about what I just did, right? So what I just did was I have minus 0.4 and I have plus 0.25. Whereas if I do segment bump, plus or minus segment bump, then everything is good. And then I need to do a pretty cause up here as well. All right. And so, where'd you go? There we are. So now we've got everything is ordered by the actual cause of death. Okay. And so that's one way to do it, right? Let's see. One idea would be to look at the ratio. Let's see. So Anderson says, I have done a similar plot, but instead of bars, I increased the size of the, in your case, death share, so it stuck out. It worked. I see. So maybe you made a point and then you made it bigger to call attention to that. We could think about that. Let's roll with this for now. So let's go ahead and try to clean things up a bit here. So the first thing I want to think about is the source. And so we've got, it's alphabetical, right? That's the default order is alphabetical. And so it'd be good to have it go by political spectrum. So New York Times, WAPO, and Fox. And so we can do that as another factor, but we need to do that after pivot longer, right? So we need to mutate source to be a factor on source. And we'll do levels, and we'll do NYT share, WAPO share, and then Fox share. And I think I actually need to add, death share, okay? Because if I do this, then we're going to get NA values. And I don't want those NA values, right? I want it to be US share, right? Death share, okay? So let's go ahead and do that here. And so now when we run this and look at D, we now see that we have death share, okay? And the order doesn't matter. I mean, like having that in there doesn't going to change the order of everything else. So let's see how this all looks together now. And so now we can see we have New York Times share, WAPO share, Fox share. And so we can get that continuum, all right? Let's now, let's see. Let's go ahead and let's put on our labels, if that's okay. And we'll come in here to scale Y continuous. I'll do labs. So we're going to do X equals, I'll say share of deaths, %. Y is going to be null, because it's going to be obvious that those are causes of death. And then we'll have a title and a caption. And so the caption, I'm going to borrow from the original. Where'd you go? Or maybe I have it in the original. Over here. Sometimes the web version I can't copy and paste from. So let me go ahead and copy and paste from the PNG. Copy, and then paste that in here. And as we've seen in the past, if we have double quotes inside of double quotes, it does weird things. And yes, we could wrap the string in single quotes, but if I then have another single quote within the string, then it's going to complain about that as well. So let's go ahead and just back out with those backslashes. And I'm getting, oh, there's another one here for flu. Okay. And so all the nasty red squiggles go away. We run that, and we now see we've got our caption down here, and the caption is going to be right justified on the plot rather than left justified on the plot. We'll deal with that. So as for a title, though, I'm going to also have a subtitle. And kind of a title that I've been thinking about is, if it bleeds, it leads. And then I'll say in 2023, the coverage of violent deaths in the New York, I think that T should be capitalized, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Fox News was disproportionate to the actual causes of death in the US. And I misspelled causes here. Did it again. All right. So we've got our title and our subtitle. Those are also now left aligned on the panel, right? This caption is right aligned on the panel. And so we can resolve that by coming in and doing theme. And we can do plot.title.position equals plot. And then plot.caption.position equals plot. And so now you can see that it's right the caption is right justified on the plot, the overall figure, and the title and subtitle are left justified on the overall plot. Okay. And do I have a typo for actual, or is that? Yep, I still have a typo. Actual. Thank you. Great. Okay. This subtitle is rather long, and so is our caption. And so we can fix that by manually entering line breaks, or we can use ggtext. So do library ggtext, get that loaded, and then down here we can do like plot.caption equals element text box simple. That's a function that comes to us from ggtext. And then we'll also do that with subtitle. And then we'll have like plot.title, and that's going to get an element text because it doesn't have anything real special going on in it. And so now what we can see is that we've got the wrapping of our subtitle and the wrapping of our caption, but we don't have the breaks like we'd like. So we need to insert those breaks. And actually, I showed before that we can get, in the last episode, like a nice break between paragraphs, like what they had here, right? This note and data sources, it's not a full line in between them. And so I can get that effect by putting in the paragraph tag, and I can bold note like this. In this case, using the paragraph tag doesn't let me use markdown, which is what you would normally use in like element text box simple. And so let's see, where's the other break? I think there's a break at the end of this, a line break, and then there's breaking out of the P tag there. And then we have another P anchor here with bolding data sources. And then we break out of the P anchor here. Oh, and I forgot. I don't think I quite got the keystroke. Okay, now we try this. And there we go. We now see that we have data sources and note are bolded. And we have this line break here like they have in their original. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to avoid doing too much into theme. Or we're going to be doing a lot in theme, so there's no need to avoid. Since we're working on these titles, let's go ahead and put in the font that they're using. And so one thing also I haven't always shown is that like these strings for the subtitle and title and caption are really long. And that causes kind of like the screen to scroll to the right a lot. I can go ahead and put in line breaks here in my code, but it won't, those line breaks won't show up that I'm putting in here. They won't show up in the actual plot, right? And so it makes our code a little bit easier to look at, okay? And here, almost done. And then here as well. All right, one more. So again, it did change. All right. There we go. Okay, I don't know what was going on, but all right. So now we basically have it so that our text looks nice. Let's go ahead and make the caption a light gray. We see it's got that light gray here. And we can do that down here in plot caption. I'll do color equals gray, maybe 60. So it's gray. We can make it smaller. So let's do like size equals 6. Okay, so I think that's a nice size. And then let's think about our subtitle and our title. So I think I want both to be with the serifed font, right? That seems to be the style. I'm trying to make a plot that would be used by OID, right? And so I'm trying to use their fonts and kind of their general styling of things. So let's do that. So we can come in here and we can do text equals element text, and I'll do family equals lotto. And so what this will do is this will make all of the text by default in here will be the lotto font, okay? And the general place that you can notice is if you look at like the 2s, like in 20, right? You notice it kind of has a shoulder to it. Maybe you can see that easier up here in the upper left corner. Whereas if I run this then with lotto, then what you see is that it's a much sharper angle down in. But of course, for our title and subtitle, we want that to be the Playfair display. And so here within title, plot title, we can do family equals Playfair. And we could do that also with plot subtitle. And so now our title and subtitle should have a serif font. Very good, it does. The serif font, at least with the text I have here, seems really thin. So let's see what happens with title if we do face equals bold. And so I think that is good. I want to make it a bit bigger. And so let's do size equals 15. That's good. I want to like, if it bleeds, it leads. I know that's like, it's meant to be a provocative title. Let's make it red, right? And I think that would make it very provocative, right? So we could do color equals red. And so that's a pure saturated red. One of the nice things, if you use these named colors, is that if you add a number to them, you'll notice they get darker, right? So maybe like red 3 would look good. Looks more blood-like, right? I don't know. I think that's cool. All right. Then for the subtitle, let's make its font a bit bigger. And so we've got, what happens if we go up to 18 for the title? That's good. And then for the subtitle, let's do size equals 14. I think that's good. The line height or line spacing is a bit much. So let's go ahead and shrink that down. And we'll do line height equals 1. And so that pulls it together. Let's go ahead and make that gray. To gray 40. Okay. And so what I'm thinking is we could color, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, Fox News, 3 different colors corresponding to 3 different colors of our points. That's a thought, right? I'm feeling like this is very wide and short. So I wonder what happens if we switch this to be width of 4, height of 6. Could probably be a little bit wider. I think this legend will move inside of the plot, or we'll even get rid of it, right? I think we'll end up getting rid of it if we can put the legend in the subtitle. So let's maybe make the width 5. Yeah, I think that's good. And so let's work on the colors, okay? And so there's a variety of different options. Let's use one. So we haven't talked a lot about color, except to like steal color from others, right? Using a digital color meter, which you can certainly do. So one is the Wes Anderson color palette in R. I go to this a lot. And so if you know Wes Anderson movies, like, I'm spacing on what this movie was called, Rushmore, right? There are colors, color palettes taken from Wes Anderson movies, right? And so this is a whimsical R package for getting colors, right? This is made by Karthik Ram, and he says, well, I thought somewhere he says kind of like, I don't know if these are actually good color schemes for data visualization, but they're pretty, right? And so they're different than like, I think the default ggplot2 types of things. One that I had for color would be to have a bluish color for the New York Times, a reddish color for Fox News, and then something kind of orangish, yellowish, maybe more yellowish for the Washington Post, to kind of give reference with those colors to the political leanings of the websites. And so, I don't know. So another option, if you're not into Wes Anderson movies, is Color Brewer. So Color Brewer 2, I'll go ahead and put this in the chat. And let me make this a bit bigger. And so Color Brewer is where ggplot2 gets its colors from. It's using kind of the default palettes from Color Brewer to make the default colors in ggplot2. And I like this website for giving me ideas on colors. So you can put in the number of classes you have. You can then say, do you have sequential, diverging, or qualitative, right? So if we do sequential, you can see it goes from like a very light hue to a much more intense hue, right? Diverging has kind of like a more muted color in the middle, like white or yellow, which is kind of we're interested in. And then it's got colors going out from there. Qualitative then gives you 3 different colors, right? That are I think picked to be very different from each other. And then you can kind of pick different options. So if we want to be colorblind safe, then you'll notice like this one goes away because it's got red and green in it, and those are not colorblind safe, right? I like the idea, like I said, of having this diverging. And we're going to have a white background. And so I don't know that I really want these white backgrounds, but maybe this would be good. Or this. I'm thinking like we could do something like this. I kind of like that, the red and blue. I'm not a fan of the middle of that white color, right? Because I'm not going to be able to make Washington Post white. Although I might not be able to make Washington Post this color either. Let's go back to Wes Anderson here. And maybe we could pick some colors from this, like the red and the blue and this orange color. All right, so we can do that. We'll try that. All right, so I will come over to packages and look for Wes Anderson. I don't have it, so I need to install it. And we will install the Wes Anderson color palette. And then I'm gonna grab the hex codes from the color palette, sorry, rather than rather than use like the actual function. So I like the blue, so spot 3, 1, and 5 of Fantastic Fox 1. Right, so that's the palette. Let's see, how do I get... All right, let me go back to the help here. There should be a way to get the hex colors without the actual palette. You scroll to the bottom. Is there anything down there? No. All right. Okay, so my other trick then is to do Wes palette. And without the question mark, put in the 2 colons. Or sorry, it's Wes Anderson. So the package name, and then if I show those, that gives us Wes palette. Okay, maybe I'm let's see. Trying to do this so that I don't have to get... Maybe it is outputting it. So it's, if I do str, there we go. So when you run Wes palette Fantastic Fox, it produces the plot, but it's actually saving the values here, right? And so the first one I did was Fantastic Fox, and I wanted this third one to be the New York Times, the red Fox, and the orange Washington Post. So let's come in here and we'll do scale color manual, and we'll do breaks equals, not a sign, and then we'll do NYT share, WAPO share, Fox share. And then we'll do values. And I need to spell values right. Okay, so then the blue color is this third one. So that's this. And then WAPO share is going to be this orange color. And then the Fox share is going to be this red one, the last one. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste that in. And there we go. So then we have the New York Times share, the WAPO share, and the Fox share. I feel like these points are maybe out of order, and so maybe we want to flip the order in the factor. So I did that where? Back up here. So here we could do like minus on these. No. Well, I could take New York Times share here and just flip these orders. And so now we have the New York Times on the top, the Washington Post in the middle, and the Fox News on the bottom. Okay. So I do not use ChatGPT. As a rule, I do not use ChatGPT. And I encourage you all not to use ChatGPT because it is a horrible crutch that keeps you from learning the important stuff that we need to learn. So let's go ahead and then put the hex codes in here for the different media sites. Okay. And so then we can get rid of our legend. And so this is going to be for the New York Times. And we'll do up here, so we'll put in a span. We'll do style equals color colon that, but we need the hash, semicolon quote, and then we'll do that. And then we need to close out of this. All right. And so now, if you look at that, we see the New York Times is that bluish color. Maybe we could make it bold so it's a bit more pronounced. And so here we can use Markdown. Okay, so the New York Times is that blue. And then the Washington Post will be the orange. Okay. Where are you? Okay, here. Span style equals color colon that. And we want to make it bold. And put in the 2 stars for bold. A single star is italic in Markdown. And we'll kick out of the span. Washington Post, and then Fox News for the Fox share. And we'll grab that. And we'll do the same thing here. Span. I don't want those quotes. Close that out. And then 2 stars for bold. Fox News. Oh, and I need 2 stars for that also on the right side. All right, so then we have the 3 things, and something I'm worried about is that Fox News is awfully close to that title red, right? And so let's come back to our friend Wes Anderson. I didn't think of that. I wonder if there's a better choice. We could always make, if it bleeds, it leads, black. Or we could use this like pinkish color from Grand Budapest. Let's try that. So I'm kind of mangling these beautiful palettes. And that's the second one, right? So I will put that in there. And then for the Fox News, there. I think that's good. These colors are more kind of pastel-y for the news versus this red for the blood, for the bleeds. And then maybe for actual causes, I'll make bold and black. I don't know if that's overdoing it, but we'll see. So we'll do span style equals color black. Okay. So let's see. I think that works. So now maybe let's go ahead and we've got kind of whatever. Let's leave that there. Let's get rid of the legend, and I will then do legend.position equals none to get rid of those. And let's see. So the subtitle margins are kind of wonky when we use element text box simple. So let's go ahead and fix that a bit. I put a period instead of a comma. So we'll do margin equals margin T. Let's do 10. B equals 10. Trying to go too fast. Okay, and then I think our line height could probably go back up. Let's do 1.1. Okay. Yeah, so you can definitely use B instead of span instead of the stars. Um, and the bold in here is coming from the two stars. So I think maybe what you're saying is that we could do B here. Yeah. Right. So instead of having separate tag basically for the bold, we could change the span to be bold. I guess the reason I wouldn't do that would be because it keeps the color and the weight separate. I don't know. If you're kind of experimenting with different ways of showing the same information, I don't know. All right, so then we got rid of the legend. Let's go ahead and something that I would like to have would be to have the title or the x-axis up at the top, right? That was in my mocked up version. So when we look at a plot, we read like a Z. So we start in the upper left corner, go over to the right, down, over to the right, right? So if I put all the important information for interpreting the plot kind of up top, then I don't have to scroll down to the bottom to see what's at the bottom, to see what is the y-axis. If I put, or what is the x-axis? If I put that up at the top, then we'll be in better shape, okay? So we can do that with scale x continuous, and we can then say position equals top. And voila, that puts that up at the top. So I like that. I don't know, let me know what you think. One thing that ggplot2 does by default that we've talked about in other live streams is it puts padding, or what it calls expand, all the way around the data. And so we see that here, right? Like there's a lot to the left of the 0. And there's stuff up at the top and there's stuff at the bottom. So I want to get rid of that expansion. And so let's go ahead and do what? We'll do that in up here. And so let's do chord Cartesian. And I'll do expand equals false. Oh, and I forgot something. I probably put in a comma instead of a plus sign. So again, that dedicates more space to the data, but it's clipping, or it's hiding a lot of stuff, right? And it clips the data, right? Like we can see that here, that we don't get the full line, we don't get the full shape of the points. And so if I come back up to chord Cartesian, I can then do clip equals off. And what it warned me about, oh, I put that in the wrong place. I put that in scale x continuous rather than in chord Cartesian, where I meant to put it. There we go, no errors. And so now we can see like the full shape, but I would like to have a little bit of room to the left. And so we could do that in scale x continuous or in chord Cartesian. I'm going to do it in chord Cartesian. I'll do xlim equals c, and let's do like -3 to NA. NA will let it determine the rightmost margin, right? And so maybe -3 is too far. Let's do -1. Where'd I put you? Well, I'm noticing I've got a scale up here. So let's move this down with the scale X. Okay. And then let's do -1. And I think that's pretty good. And maybe we can go out to the right. So instead of NA, I think it was like 52. Let's maybe make it 55. And maybe we'll do 54. Okay, that's good. And I'm thinking about putting a horizontal line across the top, right? And that's going to run into my heart disease. So I think what I want is to add some space. And so you might be saying like, well, you turned off expand and you actually can set the way it does the expansion, adding that border. I don't find that very intuitive. I'd prefer to set it manually myself like I'm doing here. So I don't know. So by default, it's like from it's like 0.5 to 15.5, I think. So if I do 0.5 to 15.5, or maybe it was like 15.4, right? But I think that's a pretty good amount of padding around the data. Okay, and cool. All right, so let's go ahead and remove the background, and so we'll do let's see, panel.grid equals element blank, and then panel.background equals element blank. So that cleans that up. We don't need these ticks, and also the default theme in ggplot2 is theme gray, and it makes the font on this text on the axes and the title a grayish color rather than black. So let's go ahead and mess with our axes. So we'll do axis dot ticks equals element blank, and maybe I'll just do that on the y-axis, and then we'll do axis dot text equals element blank color equals black, and then axis dot title element not element blank, element text. We'll do the same thing down here. Oh, and I forgot a comma after the ticks y. Okay. Hey Sid, welcome from Sweden. Great. And so that makes everything black. And maybe kind of hard to perceive the slight difference there in the color. And I'm wondering if like the numbers could be a bit smaller, and these ticks really aren't doing it for me. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all the ticks by doing axis ticks. Got rid of those. And then the axis text, let's split this apart. So we'll do dot y. That will be the causes of death, and then dot x dot top. So because our x-axis is now at the top, I need to say it's up at the top, right? So if I run this, nothing changes. If I do axis text top, and then I do like size equals 8, does that shrink it a little bit? I think that made it a bit smaller. And maybe I will make it a lighter gray rather than black. So let's do gray 40. Nah, let's keep it black. Okay. Cool. All right. And then we need some margin help down here with the caption because it's really running in to the plot. And let's see. Let's do margin equals margin, t equals 10, b equals 10. Okay, so it's probably too much margin at the bottom. So let's go ahead and just add margin to the top. The plot itself has a margin at the bottom, right? And so I think that's good. Maybe now that we've got the background removed, maybe I could expand the x-axis to get more room over there. So maybe we can take this up to like 59. Let's do 57. Okay, I think that's good. All right. So I like the idea that I think I interpreted, which was to have a black circle for like the actual causes of death. Um, and I don't know. I kind of like the lines, but the lines kind of look like grid lines, which is kind of weird. Um, so let's do this. Let's try. I'm going to comment out that geom segment thing. All right. And then I will add a geom point. I'm going to copy this down. So geom point, and so we want it where it is depth share. It's by default going to be a circle. We want the size to be 3, color to be black. And then we don't need to dodge it. So it should give us a big black circle on the line like so. And so that's cool. It is, I called this after my other geom point, so it's on top of the other points. So let's go ahead and put it behind the points. So I can do that by swapping the order of the data, of the geom called, right? And so now we see that we have the black point behind it, right? I don't know. Let me know what you think of this. That's kind of cool. One thing that I'm feeling like I could do would be to do an annotate. Annotate, and then I could do geom equals text, x equals, let's do 40, y equals 11, and label equals actual US share, or yeah, I have share, right? Share of deaths. And let's put a line break in there. And so we could left justify this. We do hjust equals 0. Let's make that left justified. And let's move that over to say 30. Let's also go ahead and do line height equals 0.9, size equals 8, size unit equals PT, family equals lotto. So we have to set the font family differently in the geoms, which is effectively what annotate is. So it has to be different from that than it is in the theme elements. And so, okay, let's move that up over here. And then what I'm thinking is like we draw an arrow. And so let's go over to the right and up on that. So let's go 35, 13. All right. And then I'm going to do annotate geom equals curve. And we'll do x. I'm spacing on, I don't do a lot of geom curve. So I'm spacing on the syntax. And so what are the aesthetics? If we go to the help and then scroll down to the aesthetics section, x, y, x end, y end. All right, that's kind of what I thought. So we'll do x equals 35, y equals 13, x end equals, I want it to go up to Cancer here, right? Which is number 14. And then, or that's a y end. Yep. And then x end is going to be whatever that is. So if I look at D for Cancer, death share. I'm going to cheat because we're kind of running low on time here. I'll go ahead and put that 26.6 there. Let's see what this looks like. I feel like I'm missing something. So endpoints can't be identical. They're not identical. What do you mean? X, Y, X end, Y end. So Sid says, my eyes are more drawn to the actual than the publishers, not necessarily the deviation, both size and pigment. That's an interesting observation. That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know what to do with that. All right. I'll think about that. For right now, I don't know why it's giving me an error. I keep running this expecting something to change. So is it not happy that I've got things overlapping? So if I do like 35.2 and 13.2, no. Let me look back at the help here. X, Y, X end, Y end. Geom curve. Huh. If anyone sees what I'm doing, delete the after 14. Delete the, okay, yeah, I did that. Yeah, the X end and Y end, if your X is the same, then you don't need X end. All right, so if I, well, let's see, if I remove this. Maybe I will not use annotate. I'll do geom curve, and I'll do all this. Now I'm getting a different error. Let's see, if I remove that, does it complain? So it's not complaining. Oh, maybe the problem, here, let's try this. And then let's do like color equals black. I'm not sure what this means. I'm going to Google this, because that's what I do. Let's click this first one. Yeah, I don't see the problem. I think it's upset that maybe the points are overlapping with other data. So if I do like 35.1, 13.1, 0.7, 14.1. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh wait, it drew it. Why'd it draw it? Let's see. All right. I guess it's drawing it even though it has an error. I don't know why. All right, there it goes. It actually works. I'm not sure why. I'm going to change the curvature. Make it negative. Oh, that's not a real argument. All right, what is the argument? Let's come up to the top. Curvature. There you go. And then maybe I'll move it to the right or to the left a little bit. Let's do 34. And then bring down the end point. So end there and say 13.8. All right, and so then we could put on an arrowhead. So we'll say arrow equals arrow. We'll do type equals filled, and then we'll do deleted too much. All right, I'm getting tired. Sorry. We'll do length equals unit 10 points. All right. So it's upset with my... Okay, let's look at the help. And I think it's in grid. And so type equals open. Maybe it's closed. Closed. Okay, so that's probably too big. We can do like, oh, nope, that needs to be inside one more. Angle equals 30. Maybe angle equals 20. That caps it down a little bit more. Maybe I'll move. Let's shorten that a little bit. Let's do 5. Shorten the arrowhead. Maybe make the line width equals 0.3. Something like that. I don't know. What do you think? So you don't need AES before the X. Because you only use the AES when you're mapping something, mapping a column to the data. And so if you're applying like the same aesthetic value to all the points, like we did with like, color equals black for the New York Times stuff, then you don't need the AES. And so it's giving me the point, even though it's giving me the plot, even though it like, I don't know, even though it's giving me that error. Okay. So maybe I'll add like another label and point to like these 3 points for drug overdose and say media reported share of deaths. Okay. And so the comment about that black being pretty pronounced, I wonder if we could make the black less intense. So we did like gray 30. Let's go like gray 40. I think that helps. I don't know. Although I'm thinking now, like I'm kind of hard coding some of this annotation, and I don't know if this is the order I want things in, right? And so I've got like 15 minutes with you all left. So I think what I'll do is I like the idea of sorting instead of by the actual share of deaths, sorting it by the ratio of the average of the media reported divided by the actual. Okay? So I'm going to try that. And so let's come back up here. So again, we did that FCT reorder by deaths share, right? And let's see, how can we do this? So let's take this, and for now, I'm going to play with this. So I'll call it Z, right? So I've got a data frame Z that has death share, Fox share, WAPO share, and NOIT share, okay? And so I'll say Z mutate ratio. And so I want to do media divided by actual, okay? So let's do mean Fox share, WAPO share, NYT share. So we'll get the mean divided by deaths share. And so it's unhappy. Why are you unhappy? These are all doubles. All right. Oh, because this needs to be a vector. But I don't think this is going to do what I want it to do. Yeah, this isn't going to do what I want it to do, because it's taking the mean of all of the columns divided by the ratio, okay? So I think what I'll do, let's step back. Okay, so I can't do that mean, because what it was doing is it's taking all four of those columns, calculating the mean of those three columns, taking those three columns, calculating the mean of them, and then dividing by the mean of the death share, okay? So instead, what I want to do is if I do this, then we have our pretty cause, our source, and our share. And I should be able to do like a group by, right? So if I do, or do a mutate, right? So mutate ratio equals, so source is a factor, so those are in the right order. So I can do ratio mean source 2:4. That doesn't work. Oh, dot by pretty cause. And that's not happy. A row mean function. There is a row mean function, but I don't want all of the I don't want all of the columns, but that gives me, I think, a better idea. All right, let's do that. Okay. So again, we had Z like this. And let's get in that for now. For now, let's put in cause. Okay. So we're going to have this. And so again, I'll call that Z. All right. And so let me maximize this. So what we could do is we could do the mutate grouped by cause, right? So we could then do Z mutate ratio equals, again, mean C death share, Fox share, WAPO share, and NYT share. Okay. And again, if we run that, we get the same ratio or the same mean for all of them, right? But if I then did dot by equals cause, then I get a different mean for each row. And so now what I can do is I can take that mean and divide by death share. And I've got death share in here, but I didn't want that there. And so now I've got the ratio for each cause. Okay, so again, the trick that I was forgetting was to be able to do it by cause. And I wonder if I can do it by row? Row-wise? So there was a row-wise function. Let me see if that still works. So if I do row-wise, yeah. So there still is a function called group by, but instead of doing group by, we could now do dot by. And so what I'll do, because I don't really have cause in there, is I'm going to do this row-wise, okay? And so let's come back up here, and we'll plop that in here. So we'll group the data row-wise, and so that gets us the desired value, gets us the ratio. And so then what we can do is then pipe this, or we could even expand our mutate to include the pretty cause stuff. And then we're going to reorder pretty cause by the ratio. Okay. And it's unhappy. All right, why are you unhappy? Let's see if this works. No. Does that work? That works, but I need to close parentheses. All right, so let's see. What's the error I'm getting? Oh, right. Because I'm doing this row-wise, and then I do the mutate. So I do need to keep these statements apart. All right, because I do this row-wise, and then after the mutate, the row-wise goes away, and then we'll do mutate to get the pretty cause. Maybe not. Maybe I have to do ungroup. Right, that worked. And so now we have, so that got us past this problem, right? So after running row-wise, you have to ungroup it. And I suspect there's a way to do this row-wise and ungroup within the mutate statement, but I don't totally know. So why don't you try adding divided by 3 in that? We could try that. So let's do mutate ratio. And I'll comment these out just in case. Yeah, that's not going to work. Well, NYT share, I think it's going to be the same problem that we had. I'd love to be wrong. And then Fox share. So, I need to add those together. Because I think it's going to take the whole vector of each of those. And then do the calculations. No. You're right. All right. I'm wrong. Thank you. Thank you, Ibrahim. Well done. So now we can not worry about all that fancy-stancy row-wise stuff, and we're good. Now when we run this, I still have my ratio in here. So before I get to pivot longer, we'll do select minus ratio. And let me leave that in. So to this point, we have all these values, which is good. Oh, we want to remove the select cause. And so now we get that NA is the ratio. So now I want to remove ratio. And then this gets us our pretty cause sorted by, or it's going to be a factor based on the ratio. So I need to go ahead and assign this back to D. And so at the top, we should expect to see like terrorism and homicide, right? Although it might be at the bottom. So we'll see. So terrorism at the top, homicide next. So these are sorted by the ratio. Okay. What do you think? I don't know that I like this. I would almost rather have it sorted by the average. I think it's weird. I think it looks weird to have terrorism and then homicide. What do you think? This would be where I would make like several versions of this plot and share it with people and ask them what they thought. I think I don't know. Any thoughts? So they're sorted by the ratio. I'm pretty sure. So if we look at D, D dollars, filter source equals deaths share. So let's see. So it goes. Oh. And then we arrange by cause, or not cause. What is it? Pretty cause. So it goes terrorism, homicide, terrorism, homicide, drug overdose, COVID-19, suicide. So it's in the right order. It just looks weird because the average of the media for homicide is so much larger than that. let's see. Yeah, I don't think that's going to matter. Yeah, that doesn't matter. Yeah, let's do it by average media because I'm focusing on the media and the title. So that was fun. It doesn't take much to change this though. So all I need to do is remove that divide by depth share, and maybe I'll do av media, and then instead of ratio here, I'll do av media, and then I'll remove it there. And now it's sorted by the average media. And so then what I'll do is I'll move this label down to, I think I had it by cancer. Let's put it down to heart disease. And so that's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 and 8. All right, that didn't quite work. We need to move down our Y for the text. Let's go down to say 6. And 6. And then Y end would be 7.8. And it needs to come the X position. Let's make this 36, 35, 28. Oh, a little bit more. Let's make that 38, 37, 30. All right, so we can move the X over a little bit, say 29. I should have kept track of the math. There we go. So that's cool. And then we could do the other up here. Something like this. And then we could say media reported share of deaths. And then we'll put that maybe right justified at 35. And so we'll do hjust equals 1. And then not worry about the curve for right now. And then y, I want it maybe at 13. Maybe we can move it over to the right. Let's do 38 and 14. All right. And then we can have an arrow coming out and up. Maybe I'll move it down a little bit. I know I want to be done here because we're at 2 hours. And then we can do the arrow. All right, and then on the right side of this though, right? So that's like at 39. And we're gonna end at 43. And then we're gonna start at y of 13 and go up to say 14 and a half. Oh, that was way off. Oh, 14.5, not 1.5. And my curvature is flipped. So I need to do curvature equals the default of 0.5. And maybe I can move the arrow out to the right a bit. And so that's going to be the X end on the arrow. Let's go to 46. Hey, Robert, welcome. Welcome. So I think I will stop there, and let me know what you think. One little thing I'm going to change is maybe not have the arrow go directly into the point there for the actual cause of deaths. I can't help myself. You all know that by now if you've watched any of these videos. Y end, let's go to 7.6. That's cool. And I'm going to lose the in the US because I think it looks weird to have the US on the very bottom. And I think it's going to be obvious that those are the US since those are US companies. So we'll stop with death. And there we go. All right. So here's my version. And here's their version. All right. Your job is to tell me that mine looks better. No. I think I would continue to poke and prod at this a bit and get feedback from others, right? I think like this margin here is a little bit too big. Anyway, let me know what you think. Bleeds. Yes. EEDS. Thank you for correcting that. There's supposed to be a spell check that our studio has, but it doesn't seem to be working right now. At least I must not have something set up right. There we go. So again, my goal in remaking what they had on the right with the left was to make it easier to compare within a cause of death, right? And so you can see homicide, right? That like that these three media, so it makes it easier to compare the three media to each other as well as to the actual cause of death, right? Because if you're doing, well, let's just say if you're doing cancer, right? And so that's a big chunk right here. And then I come over here, I'm like, wait, like instantly, if I just gave you a second, you could not find cancer on the right side, right? You'd be like, oh, it's up here. And then I have to scroll over, right? If I saw accidents here, I don't know, maybe I can catch it up here, but it takes me a bit to kind of go from Alzheimer's. Where is Alzheimer's over here, right? I don't see it. Whereas if I'm doing Alzheimer's, I see Alzheimer's is down here. I can see that it's very low, it's not being reported much by the media, and it's much less than the actual causes of death, right? And so by making it as I have it on the left, it's much easier to compare between the media sites and then also to compare those media sites to the actual rate of death, right? And so I think the dot plot is a superior way to do this than a stacked bar plot. Yes, there are differences in aesthetics and how we might go about making this look right. I would love, if anybody from Our World in Data is ever watching this video, I would love to get feedback. Maybe I'll email it to them and just be like, hey, have you ever thought about doing something other than a stacked bar plot? Because I see stacked bar plots in a number of your articles and they're really hard to interpret. What would you think of something like a dot plot, right? And so again, my goal here wasn't to make a figure that would go in an academic publication, but to make something that could reasonably show up at Our World in Data's website. So if you have other ideas, by all means, put them down in the comments. We can keep the discussion going. I'm going to move on to other things in my next video. But so that you don't miss that episode, please make sure that you've subscribed to the channel. You've given this a thumbs up. I really appreciate people watching this all the way to the end and the great discussion that we've had going on here in the chat and with the live stream. And so I see a comment about a heat map. And so a heat map is another way to represent this type of data. And actually, You might have read my newsletter that I released earlier this morning where I talk about heat maps and other ways to represent these types of data. So stay tuned on that for next week. Keep practicing, and please tell your friends what we're doing here on Code Club, and I will see you next time.